This lecture explores a profound and liberating habit, the habit of grace. This is the topic of Chapter 26 in Lead Like Jesus Revisited by Blanchard. Grace, in its essence, is an undeserved gift, a divine favor that we cannot earn. Grace is at the core of how God relates to us, and it's central to how Jesus lived and led. For us as leaders, embracing the habit of grace is not just an opportunity, it's a calling to mirror God's heart to the people that we serve. Let's begin by unpacking what grace means, how it transforms our lives in leadership, and how we can intentionally cultivate this habit in our daily walk with God and others. You see, grace is a cornerstone of the Christian faith. The Bible tells us in Ephesians 2:8-9, "For it is by grace that you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." Well, what does that mean? It means that our salvation, our relationship with God, and even the ability to lead effectively are not rewards for what we've done, but undeserved gifts that come from God. Grace reflects God's deep love for us, a love that isn't based on our performance or our accomplishments, but rather it's freely given and we respond to it. As leaders, this understanding of grace is crucial. We often find ourselves in a culture that measures success by metrics, results, achievements. But grace invites us to shift our focus from striving to abiding, from proving our worth to resting in God's love. When we embrace this, we not only experience transformation, but we also create an atmosphere of grace for those we lead. Jesus is the ultimate example of grace in action. Throughout his ministry, Jesus extended grace to everyone that he encountered, the outcasts, the sinners, even his enemies. Think of the woman caught in adultery in John chapter 8. The religious leaders wanted to stone her, citing the law. But Jesus responded with grace. He said, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And then, after the crowd dispersed, he turned to the woman and he said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." This is grace in its purest form, truth coupled with love. Jesus did not condone sin, but he also did not condemn the sinner. Instead, he offered her a path to transformation, which led to a response to practice a new way of living. And then he said to her, "Go and sin no more." In other words, we are expected in response to Jesus to no longer practice sin as a lifestyle. Instead, make progress and a new life lived for him. As leaders, we are called to follow this example. We must lead with both truth and love, holding people accountable while also extending them the grace they need to grow and learn and thrive. And none of us will do it perfectly. That's where forgiveness comes in. We might ask, what does grace have to do with leadership? Well, the answer is everything. Leadership rooted in grace reflects God's character and transforms relationships. First, grace frees us from perfectionism. We don't have to be perfect. Many leaders, myself included, feel the pressure to have all the answers and to never make mistakes. Your pastor feels that pressure too. But grace reminds us that we are human, that we fall short, and we will fall short, and that God's strength is made perfect in our weakness. When we lead with grace, we allow ourselves to be authentic and vulnerable and trust his ongoing forgiveness. Second is grace fosters trust and safety. When people know that they will not be shamed or condemned for their failures, then they begin to feel safe to take risks and innovate and even confess. They're more likely to admit mistakes and seek help, step out in faith, and grow under your leadership. Lastly, grace inspires others. A leader who practices grace models Christ-like behavior, drawing others closer to God. When people experience grace through us, they are more likely to extend it to others, creating a ripple effect that transforms teams, organizations, and entire communities. The habit of grace doesn't develop overnight. It requires intentionality and a practice. There are several steps we can take to make grace a daily habit in our lives, and they include step 1, receive grace first. We cannot give what we have not received. To extend grace to others, we must first embrace God's grace and ongoing forgiveness in our own lives. This means recognizing our need for God's mercy and forgiveness and allowing His love to transform us from the inside out in spite of the mistakes that I'll make today. Spend time daily reflecting on God's grace through prayer and scripture and worship. Let His grace fill you so that it overflows to others. This is yet another reason why commitment to a daily time, place, and plan to spend in spiritual disciplines and self-awareness is so incredibly important. Step 2 is see people through God's eyes. One of the eyes to leading with grace, one of the keys, is to see people not as they are, but as God sees them, valued, loved, full of potential. This perspective helps us to be patient and compassionate and encouraging, even when dealing with difficult people or situations, just like He's been that way for you. Step 3 is balance grace with truth. Grace does not mean avoiding hard conversations or ignoring accountability. It means addressing issues with love and respect and a desire for restoration. Remember, Jesus was full of both grace and truth. As leaders, we must strive for that same balance. Step 4 is be quick to forgive. Just as we have been forgiven, we are called to forgive others. Holding on to resentment or bitterness or anger not only harms us, but also undermines our ability to lead effectively. Make forgiveness a daily practice and trust God to handle the rest. Step 5, finally, is model grace in your actions. Let your actions speak louder than your words. Demonstrate grace in how you handle mistakes, how you give feedback, and how you celebrate progress. When you lead with grace, you create a culture where people feel valued and empowered and safe. As we wrap up, let's remember that grace is not just a concept. It's a way of life. It's a habit that transforms our hearts and our relationships, our leadership, and our coaching. By embracing the habit of grace, we mirror the love of Christ to the world around us, and we fulfill our calling as servant leaders. Let me leave you with this thought. Imagine the impact we could have if we embodied the habit of grace. How would our workplace, our families, our communities, our churches, our ministries, our small groups change? How would it impact our leadership and our coaching practice? Well, the good news is it actually begins with us anyway. So today, let's commit to receiving God's grace, extending it to others, and making it a cornerstone of our leadership. And may you and I together, like Jesus, be leaders who are filled with grace and truth.